Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that, well, it really sparks the imagination, doesn't it? Cryonics. This whole idea of preserving a human body after death with the hope of, future revival.
It's definitely out there.
It sits right at this fascinating, maybe slightly strange intersection of science, ethics, and our thoughts about the future. So our mission today is to really get under the skin of cryonics.
Yeah, to unpack what's real science and what's still, let's say, speculation.
Exactly. And we're drawing on various discussions, some academic research to piece together a clear picture for you.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Cryonics, at its heart, is about low-temperature preservation, usually of a whole human body or sometimes just the brain.
And crucially, this happens after legal death is declared.
Yes, that's a really key point. It's post-mortem. And it's important to understand it's not just like freezing someone solid in a block of ice.
Right, because that would cause damage, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Ice crystals and all that.
Precisely. Ice crystals forming inside cells would basically shred them. So the aim is different. They use something called cryoprotective agents.
Cryoprotectants. Okay, what do they do?
Well, think of them like a biological antifreeze, but much more complex. They're perfused into the body to replace a lot of the water in the cells and tissues.
Replacing the water. Why?
So that when the body is cooled down to extremely low temperatures, we're talking liquid nitrogen temperatures, around minus 196 Celsius.
Wow, that's cold.
Oh yeah. Instead of freezing and forming damaging ice crystals, the remaining fluid becomes like a glass. It vitrifies.
Vitrifies, like turning into glass.
Exactly. A solid, stable state that ideally halts decay and preserves the structure right down to the cellular level.
Okay, so it's about preserving the structure, hoping decay stops. Now, this idea, it feels futuristic, but it's not brand new, is it?
No, not at all, actually. The concept really started gaining traction back in the 1960s.
The 60s, okay.
Yeah, it was a time of, huge scientific optimism, thinking about what future tech might unlock. But it has to be said, it's been debated scientifically and philosophically ever since. It's still pretty controversial.
So it's not just theoretical discussions. Are there places actually doing this?
Oh, yes. There are dedicated facilities. The Alcor Life Extension Foundation is probably the most well-known. The Cryonics Institute is another major one.
And they offer services. People sign up for this.
Correct. People make arrangements beforehand.
Yeah.
And they can choose different options, too.
Like what?
Well, some opt for whole-body preservation. Others choose what's called neuropreservation.
Neuro. So just the brain.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Preserving the head, or just the brain itself, based on the idea that, that's the seat of identity and consciousness.
That is a fascinating and maybe slightly unsettling choice to consider. We touched on this, but just to be crystal clear, the process starts after death.
Absolutely, 100%. Legally and ethically, cryonics procedures cannot begin until a person has been pronounced legally dead by standard medical criteria.
So it's not about freezing someone who's critically ill but still alive.
No, it's a post-mortem procedure. The hope, the gamble really, is that future technology might not only fix whatever caused the death, but also repair any damage from the preservation process itself and, well, revive the person.
Okay, we've got the what and the when. Let's dig into the how, specifically the revival part, because preserving seems like one massive challenge, but waking someone up again, that feels like a whole other level.
You've hit the nail on the head. Revival is, without doubt, the major scientific unknown. It's the biggest hurdle by far.
It's not just like thawing a frozen chicken, I assume.
No, not quite. Even if vitrification works perfectly, which is a big if, safely rewarming a large, complex biological system from minus 196 degrees without causing damage is incredibly difficult. And then you have to repair the original damage, the cause of death.
And you mentioned vitrification turning things to glass. But isn't glass, well, fragile?
That's a really sharp point, yes. While vitrification avoids ice damage, there are trade-offs. The chemicals used, the cryoprotectants, need to be used in very high concentrations to work.
And that's bad.
It can be, yeah. They can be toxic to cells themselves at those levels.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate balance. You're trying to prevent ice damage, but you risk chemical damage.
Okay.
And also, the vitrified state itself, while solid, is extremely brittle. Imagine cooling and warming a large object like a human body. The stresses could cause fractures.
So it's complex. There's toxicity risk, fracture risk. Given all that, what does the science actually say about how well preservation works right now? Is there proof?
Well, there's been progress on smaller scales. Researchers, like Gregory Fay and his team, have had success vitrifying and rewarming smaller biological structures. things like rabbit kidneys, blood vessels.
Okay, smaller components.
Right. They published work back in 2009 showing advances. But, and this is the crucial, but successfully scaling that up from a single organ or tissue sample to an entire human body. That's a monumental leap.
A completely different ballgame.
Exactly. The complexity increases exponentially. So whole body vitrification and successful revival in humans remains, scientifically unproven. Very much so.
Makes sense. An organ is one thing, a whole person is another. So thinking about this potential future revival,
Yeah.
what's the absolute must-have? What needs to be preserved perfectly?
For most people thinking about this, it really comes down to the brain.
The brain. Because that's us.
Precisely. Our memories, our personality, our consciousness, it's all encoded in the brain's structure and function. So any meaningful revival would absolutely depend on preserving the intricate network of connections between neurons, the synapses.
Synapses, the connections where memories are stored.
Yes. And not just the physical structure, but potentially the neurochemical balance, the patterns that represent long-term memories. If that complex information is lost or scrambled during preservation or rewarming,
What then? Who or what wakes up?
that's the profound question.
Is
Is it still the same person?
Has there been any progress on preserving something as complex as a brain, even without the waking up part yet?
Actually, yes, there was a significant piece of research there. Back in 2016, work by 21st Century Medicine, involving McIntyre and Fahey again.
Okay.
They managed to vitrify an entire rabbit brain, cool it down, rewarm it, and crucially, electron microscopy showed that the structure, including the synapses, was remarkably well preserved.
Wow, a whole rabbit brain with connections intact.
Largely intact, yes. It was a major milestone. It showed that preserving the physical hardware of a complex mammalian brain might be possible.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There is a very important one. They preserved the structure, but they didn't demonstrate any functional revival. They didn't, reboot the brain.
So the hardware looked okay, but we don't know if the software could ever run again.
Exactly. Preserving structure is a vital first step, absolutely necessary. But restoring function, that remains a massive unresolved challenge.
Okay, so the science is fascinating, promising in some ways, but facing these huge obstacles. Which naturally brings us to the what-ifs. What kind of future tech are people even imagining might make revival possible?
Right. This is where we move more into the realm of speculation, but based on emerging fields. One major area is nanomedicine.
Nanomedicine, tiny robots.
Kind of, yeah. The idea of molecular scale machines that could potentially go in and repair cellular damage, maybe even fix DNA damage, caused by the process or the original illness.
Nanobots fixing cells. Sounds very sci-fi.
It does, but it's an active area of research. Then there's advanced AI. Artificial intelligence could be crucial for diagnostics, figuring out the damage, and maybe even helping to reconstruct damaged neural pathways.
Okay, nanotech, AI. What else?
Another really mind-bending concept is whole brain emulation.
Emulation, like running a brain on a computer.
Essentially, yes. The idea is you take a preserved brain, scan its structure in incredibly fine detail, every neuron, every synapse, and then simulate that entire network on a powerful enough computer.
Whoa. So a digital consciousness.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That's one interpretation. And related to fixing the body, there's regenerative medicine using stem cells, tissue engineering, that sort of thing, to repair or replace damaged organs and tissues.
Digital consciousness that really takes the idea of revival somewhere else entirely.
It absolutely does. Thinkers like Anders Sandberg and Nick Bostrom have explored this. They suggest that if whole brain emulation became possible, it might not just be revival as we think of it, but potentially a form of digital immortality.
Where your consciousness exists outside a biological body.
Right. It opens up huge philosophical questions about what life and identity even mean.
So wrapping this all up then, cryonics, today, it really feels like a profound gamble, doesn't it? A bet on the future.
That's a good way to put it. It's a bet that future science and technology will overcome challenges that seem insurmountable to us right now. Fixing the reasons for death, fixing the preservation damage, restoring function.
It's a hope for capabilities far beyond what we currently have.
Exactly. A belief, or maybe a hope, that what seems impossible now might become possible someday. Some proponents, like Max Moore, who used to head Alcor, frame it as aiming for a second chance, leveraging future tech rather than trying to cheat death now.
An optimistic bet on progress.
You could say that.
Which leaves us, and you, our listeners, with a really provocative thought to chew on. Let's circle back to that digital idea. If someday a cryopreserved brain could be scanned in enough detail to perfectly simulate its activity, its thoughts, memories, personality, in a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Would that count as revival? Even if the original biological body is never reanimated, is a perfect simulation of you still you?
That's a question that pushes right at the boundaries of how we define life, consciousness, and maybe even the soul. Something to think about.